So the 2024 regular season has finally wrapped up with the Lions laying the absolute smackdown on the Minnesota Vikings. And with another season in the books, I figure now is as good a time as any to rank the NFL quarterbacks this season from all the way from cream of the crop all the way down to Galveston. If you know, you know. There's 45 quarterbacks on this list. I'm not going to rank all of them because I don't think all of them really warrant to be ranked. But I do want to go through a good chunk of the guys on this list. And I think I have a lot of opinions that will make a lot of people angry. And nothing gets points on the YouTube algorithm like making people angry. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with Tua Tagovailoa. Ever since that wildcard playoff game against the Chiefs, I have been completely out on Tua. I don't think he's very good. He's going to go into the super meh tier. I think he is an average to maybe even below average quarterback carried by a great supporting cast. I don't think he has any really elite traits when it comes to being a quarterback. His arm's not that strong. He's not super accurate. He's a net negative as an athlete. He strikes me as a one-read quarterback. He's good enough to deliver an open route every now and then to hit a wide-open Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Devon Achane with an offensive coach that's done everything to cater for him. The Miami Dolphins have done almost everything to cater for this man to the best of their ability, and it seems like their ceiling is a wild card loss, and I think the Dolphins were crazy for giving Tua all that money in the first place. Trevor Lawrence seemed poised to be all the way up here in cream of the crop, but ever since that playoff game against the Chargers, it has been completely downhill, so he's going to sit right next to Tua in the super meh tier. Listen, I went on and on about the Jaguars in my team's ranking video. They seem to be a franchise that doesn't know how to sustain success. They're probably going to run through another head coach and maybe another front office, which they should. I don't know how much of Jacksonville's failures is Trevor's fault. Probably not a lot. But when you're a first overall pick and supposed to be one of those generational next big thing quarterbacks in the pantheon of an Andrew Luck or even a Peyton Manning, I got to see more. So for now, he's meh. Derek Carr, I don't think Derek Carr is super old, but I don't care. He's in the you're done old man tier. I'm glad this guy had his amazing 1 year peak with the Raiders in 2016, and it's unfortunate that season ended with a broken leg, and I have no idea why the Saints gave him all that money thinking they could keep the good times going, but the Saints are another one of those completely lost franchises, and Derek Carr is doing them no favors. That 2-week high was pretty cool, though. Sam Darnold. Guys, I'm sorry. I know this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. I know he had a great season. The Vikings went 14-3. But I'm sorry, I don't see it with Sam Darnold. I think he's better than Tua and Trevor, for the record, especially this year. I just don't have it in me to lob him in with that third tier of quarterbacks. I have been of the opinion basically all season that while Sam Darnold is a really good story, and while he is by no means a scrub, I do think he is strictly a product of Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson. Now, in terms of Sam Darnold's career arc, I'm happy for him because he started in maybe the most pathetic organization you could dream of in the New York Jets, and then when he got traded, it may have actually gotten worse. So him actually going to an amazing situation in Minnesota where he can actually look good around a competent franchise, you know what? It kind of evens out. So I'm happy for Darnold, and I know the statistics say he's been really good this year, and I'm glad he's had a career revival. I have nothing against the dude, but I watched a lot of Vikings games this year. He is incredibly turnover prone, and I gotta be honest with you, I feel like every time he takes a snap, his first thought is Justin Jefferson open? Throw him the ball. I said that in the team's rankings video, and I'll say it again. I don't think that's a terrible idea, but the top quarterbacks, even the guys that are bona fide stars, don't have to resort to that. Kyler Murray might be the most super meh quarterback in this entire video. I feel like he's kind of flown under the radar the last couple of years. In the early part of his career, I thought he was overrated, and then until last year, I honestly thought he was underrated, and now I think he's properly rated because no one talks about him. Maybe that's because he's on the Cardinals, maybe that's because everyone's sick of making fun of him, but Kyler Murray is kind of just there. Did he warrant all that money? No. Is he a terrible passer? No. I think the Cardinals are kind of just stuck with him being decent until they can get out of that contract. Josh Allen, I don't think I'm going to be surprising anybody when I say he belongs in cream of the crop. He has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. I'm not going to get into the MVP debate with him and Lamar Jackson. I feel like that has been the pettiest war I've seen since the Embiid Jokic MVP debate like 2 years ago. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I think Lamar Jackson deserves it. I think Josh Allen deserves it. I'd cast my vote for Lamar, but if you want to give it to Josh, I won't think twice. Just look, they're both having a great year. They're both outstanding quarterbacks. Josh Allen has been brilliant, despite the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, kind of irresponsibly asking Josh to do way too much of the heavy lifting to the point to where I think it could hurt them in January. But either way, Josh has been brilliant and the Bills are set for a very long time. Nobody got hit harder by the sophomore slump than good old CJ Stroud. I'm a little torn as to where to put him because in my opinion, in terms of the season he's had, he's like somewhere down here, but I'm going to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt and keep him in the bona fide star tier. The Texans seem poised to have another outstanding season after their franchise bounce back in 2023, but then Nico Collins is in and out of the lineup. They lose Stephon Diggs halfway through the season. They lose Tank Dell late in the season. Their defense seems to regress down the stretch, and it just seems like everything that can go wrong has gone wrong for Houston this year. I only think some of that is on Stroud. He's definitely not as good as he was last year, but just because he's had one down year in the second year of his career, I'm not going to completely write him off. If this keeps up, he will be well on his way to that Trevor Lawrence arc. But right now, I'm going to give Stroud a little bit of a pass. Dak Prescott, I think, is a quarterback that is completely locked into the bona fide star tier for the rest of his career. I think he's made it very clear that he is not the kind of guy that can lead Dallas to a Super Bowl, but I also think he's made it very clear that he is good enough to give you serviceable quarterback play, and when he's healthy and when the roster isn't a complete mess, can go to the playoffs and can even win a division every now and then, as Dallas has done multiple times with Dak Prescott. I think they were crazy for giving him $60 million a year, but again, I don't think he is by any means bad. I think Dallas has no chance to go on a run without him. And I think with Dak Prescott for an entire season, I do think there is a solid established floor that Dallas can get to as long as the roster isn't completely horrible. Maybe nobody in this list has had a career revival quite like Baker Mayfield. I'm tempted to put him in diet cream of the crop, but I'm going to put him in the top of the bona fide star tier. Ever since he had that 98-yard touchdown drive to beat the Raiders when he was in LA after only 48 hours, he has been the consummate good guy of the sport. And I gotta be honest with you, as someone who couldn't stand him when he was in Cleveland, I've been very happy to see him succeed, especially to make the Cleveland Browns shove it up their you-know-what for getting rid of him for the adult in the room, and we will get to him later. It didn't seem possible that a quarterback could carry the torch from Tom Brady, and I'm not saying Baker Mayfield is Tom Brady, but he has had a terrific year. The Buccaneers are back in the playoffs for the 4th year in a row, I believe. No, actually, it's the 5th year in a row, and I don't see them going away anytime soon. I don't know if Bowles is the answer at head coach, but I think the Buccaneers have their quarterback problem solved for a long time. Caleb Williams, I know a lot of people hate this guy because he had a pink phone and painted his nails or whatever, but just give him some time. I think he had a lot of wow moments this season while being on a dysfunctional Bears squad. Maybe it was kind of foolish of us, and I guess me, to say that Caleb Williams is walking into the best situation of any first overall pick. That might be true because of first overall pick situations are typically supposed to be god-awful. At least Caleb had DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze at wide receiver, but coaching-wise, this team has been an absolute mess. This franchise notoriously does not shell out for coaches. They didn't get Jim Harbaugh when they had the chance. They ran it with Matt Eberflus, and they finally showed him the door after a disastrous season. They had that Washington game won, gave up the Hail Mary, and it ended up being the first of 10 straight losses, and I don't really think a lot of that is on Caleb. I'll get to Caleb more when I get to a different rookie quarterback later in this list, but just be patient with Caleb. He's going to be fine. Justin Herbert is the one and only quarterback that sits in the diet cream of the crop tier. This is for one reason and one reason only. I don't think he quite belongs in a tier with the big four of the NFL, and most of you can probably understand who that big four is, but I do think he is far better than any quarterback below him, so I gave him a tier all to himself. I think one of the biggest skill checks to ball knowledge in the NFL is asking people what they think of Justin Herbert, because the stats and the team record might indicate that he's nothing special. But anyone who watches him play understands he's one of the very best in the league. He is super talented. And in year one, with an actual head coach and an actual roster, the Chargers are back in the playoffs, and I expect them to win their first game against Houston. This is a Chargers team that is still picking up the pieces from the absolute mess that Staley and Telesco left behind, and year one with Harbaugh has shown some solid results. And I think Herbert deserves a lot of success because of that. So I do think he is top 5. Aaron Rodgers, I'm glad his career ended on a high, but he is the definition of the the you're done old man tier. It's kind of sad to see, but also Aaron Rodgers probably did this to himself. He practically handpicked this team and their coaching staff, and it has been a complete disaster. I'm not going to go on and on about the Jets because I'm sure all of you notice it already, and I'm sure there's 1,000 videos out there chronicling how incompetent the Jets have been, so I'll just leave it at that. And if that game was the last of Aaron Rodgers' career we saw against Miami, I'm glad he was able to go out on a high, and we'll see him in Canton in a few years. Mac Jones, back up. He's Mac Jones. I don't know what else to say. Jaylen Herz. This is a really weird one. I think Jaylen Herz is like, how do I put this? He's like super Tua, if that makes any sense. He's like Tua if you jacked him up in a way. I'm going to put him freshly in bona fide star. I don't think Jaylen Herz is changing your life or anything, but his athleticism is good enough to give him some highs, and his arm is good enough to give him some highs. I think Hertz is more than capable of leading the Eagles on a deep playoff run, but I do think there's a little bit of a knock because of that little dry spell the Eagles offense was in at like the early to midpoint of the 2024 season. That's off the top of my head. I think it was like the early to mid phase. But when AJ Brown was out, this Eagles offense, like they could barely move the ball. They were a completely different team. And I do think a lot of that is because of the attention someone like AJ Brown draws away, who is a complete and utter phenom to the point to where I think he might be he's probably top 5. And I think is getting way too underrated for how good he is. You combine that with Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and an offensive line that misses Jason Kelce but isn't exactly desperate without him, and you have probably the most well-oiled offensive machine in terms of all-around roster, other than maybe the Lions. And I think Jaylen Hertz is good enough to make it work and good enough to stay out of the way if he's not playing super well, but I don't quite think he's in that top 5. Kirk Cousins, great guy, but you're done. Lamar Jackson, I said the same thing about Josh Allen when it comes to the MVP debate. I'm not going to reiterate that here, but he is in cream of the crop. 45 touchdowns, the first quarterback in NFL history to have 4,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards. I think he's such a one-of-one threat on the ground that he draws so much attention that it actually helps bolster the rest of the ground attack. Derrick Henry's been brilliant, but I don't think his yards per carry going from 4.2 all the way up to almost 6 is a coincidence. I'll plug it in if I can remember, but against the Washington Commanders, Lamar had a play where he handed it off to Derrick Henry, and the safeties in the back stumbled and fell because they had to be wary of Lamar Jackson keeping it on the bootleg. Those stats, that gravity, and frankly that highlight reel has a 2-time MVP playing arguably the best football he's ever played, and it might result in MVP number 3. Anthony Richardson, I love you. I've been wanting you to succeed ever since you came out of college, but Galveston tier. This guy is just not the answer. I hate to say it about Anthony Richardson because he is such a good guy, but I gotta be honest, whenever I watch him play, it is mind-numbing. He is so bad passing the football. It is like an uphill battle for this man to complete half his passes. And I think the Colts have honestly done a decent job of building a roster around him. Jonathan Taylor's a stud. Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce and Josh Downs is a perfectly fine wide receiver trio. And in my opinion, Shane Steichen is still a good head coach. And maybe it's not fair to Anthony Richardson. In hindsight, he probably didn't have any business getting drafted so high in the first place and having such high expectations shouldered on him to begin with, because he was never really even that good in college statistically. So him going that high off of raw talent alone was insane, because I think any NFL team now sees how raw Josh Allen was and sees how he panned out and goes, oh, we could just turn this quarterback into Josh Allen, and it doesn't work. Guys, quit showing me graphics that compare Anthony Richardson to rookie Josh Allen. Anthony Richardson, I do not anticipate to just turn into Josh Allen in year 3. It's not happening. I'm not going to rank Kenny Pickett. Let's just get straight to Michael Penix. He's another personification of the just give it time tier. Again, I think the Falcons made the right decision when they started him over Cousins. And although it's a really small sample size, I think he's looked pretty good. He has a really good arm. The poise is there. The accuracy is there. I think Penix is going to be pretty good. And I think everyone's initial overreaction to Atlanta picking him 8th overall is probably going to be a little bit overblown. Of course, the Falcons season ended on another disappointing note when their defense gave up 44 to the Carolina Panthers, and Penix looked far from perfect. I think the structure needs some work, and I think his throwing motion needs some work as well. But all in all, given the sample size and the, I guess, rawness of Penix's play in college, I think he looked pretty good, and I think the Falcons are going to be set at quarterback for a while. Drake May, another quarterback, and just give it time. I lauded how good I think he's going to be in the team's rankings video, and I stand by it. I think Drake May is going to have an excellent season. They fired Gerard Mayo, and hopefully they make the right decision at head coach. I don't know exactly who they should hire because I don't think Ben Johnson is walking through that door, but I think if the Patriots can get an actual wide receiver trio, which will probably have to come through free agency, because it's clear that those guys do not know how to draft wide receivers. So I think if they can build an offensive structure for Drake May, I think the Patriots can be really good, and maybe a little sooner than people think. Joe Flacco, I hate to do this to my glorious king, my pride and joy, my Super Bowl MVP, Joe Flacco, but yeah, it's over. That run he had last year with Cleveland was pretty cool, but yeah, we didn't see that in Indianapolis. It's over, Joe Flacco. Thank you for the memories. Drew Lock, he did play a couple meaningful games this year, so I guess I'll rank him. He'll just go and back up. I mean, I don't really have much else to say. It's Drew Lock. Bryce Young, after last year, I might have put him all the way down here in Galveston, but honestly, just give it time. He came back from his benching here in 2024, and I think down the stretch, he looked really, really good. By no means a superstar, but he showed stuff that we never saw in his rookie season and through the first phase of his second season. His accuracy is much better. His footwork is much better. He's shown he can do some work improvisation-wise. I think Bryce Young does have the potential to do really good. I'm just concerned that good old Tepper and co will screw it up, but I do think Canales has the goods to be a solid NFL head coach. I'm really interested to see what their new front office can do with this roster. It might take a bit of time, but I do think with how volatile the NFC South is, I do think the Panthers could return to relevance sooner rather than later if they play their cards properly. Deshaun Watson, Galveston. I went on this whole rant in the team's rankings video. I don't feel like doing it again, but just know that I saw a report that says the Browns plan on bringing Watson back in 2025. So, LOL. You guys might hate me for this, but I'm going to put Will Levis in the just give it time tier. I don't think he's super terrible. I don't think he's necessarily changing anyone's life at quarterback, but I think the dude has a legit arm and the guy can play. I just think the Titans are the most pathetic situation in all of football for quarterbacks. I don't think any team would give you a worse time as a young quarterback than the Titans. I think you're worse off than the Patriots or the Panthers or the Jaguars or anything. This is a Titans team that can't run the ball because Derrick Henry walked away. They can't really do much in the receiving game because Calvin Ridley's old and Treylon Burks is not A.J. Brown, even though they thought they could just moneyball A.J. Brown out of town and draft a new guy to replace him. And their offensive line is abysmal, and I don't think Brian Callahan is a good head coach. The Titans are an absolute mess, and in my opinion, Levis is the least of their problems. Now, they did win the Tank Bowl to get the first overall pick, so I wouldn't be too shocked if the Titans moved on from Levis and drafted Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward to be the new quarterback. But if I were one of these other teams looking for, I guess, a flyer on a young quarterback to see what he can do, for example, I'm just going to throw a team out there, maybe New Orleans, even though that wouldn't really be a great situation either. Maybe New Orleans, maybe Seattle, perhaps a team like, I don't know, the Colts. I would throw in a flyer on Will Levis and see what he can do. I think the guy's got potential. Daniel Jones, Galveston. He's been roasted all year, whether rightfully or not. He seems like a good guy and a class act, and he's in Minnesota now. He's not even in that Giants blue anymore. But yeah, I don't really feel like going on the rant about Daniel Jones again. I've done that all the time in my Discord. He is a quarterback. Enjoy your decade-long career as a journeyman, Daniel. The Brock Purdy debate has been raging ever since he entered the league on whether or not he is a superstar or a bozo carried by the talent around him. And I know I made that exact same argument for Sam Darnold, but I think Brock Purdy is better than Sam Darnold. I don't think he's changing anyone's life at quarterback, and I don't think the 49ers should give him $60 million a year or even $50 million a year. But I do think he is good enough to lead a good roster into the playoffs and beyond. This 49ers team, with all of their injuries and their age and their overall regression, had no chance to succeed. I don't think any quarterback, aside from maybe the top 5 plus Baker, could have led the 49ers anywhere this year. So I'm going to give Purdy a little bit of a pass. Again, I would not give him the market-setting contract, but I don't think it's all his fault that the 49ers were bad this year. I think he's the least of their problems. Jameis Winston has had a really weird career, but I think he is officially settled in as a backup. He is the people's backup. He is the Cleveland Browns quarterback we could actually root for this year. So I will always have appreciation for him for that alone. Jameis Winston is by no means a star or maybe even a starting quarterback, but he is capable enough to just be in the league as a backup strictly as, like, I don't know, a vibes guy. Patrick Mahomes, blah, blah, blah. Statistically, he hasn't been that good. I don't care. Cream of the crop. He's the best quarterback in the league until he's not. Until someone can actually dethrone the freaking Chiefs. Mahomes is kind of just grandfathered into quarterback one until proven otherwise. His stats weren't exactly life-changing this year because ever since trading Tyreek Hill away, the Chiefs have decided to pivot more to a defense-structured game. They said, we're going to get Nick Bolton, we're going to get Trent McDuffie, we're going to pay Chris Jones, we're going to center our team around the defense, and we just know Patrick Mahomes in the big games can get us like 24 points if need be. So we'll focus on defense, and that has won them the last 2 Super Bowls and has them poised to go for a three-peat. So Mahomes is just going to sit here in the top because we all know if the Chiefs build their team around superstar receivers and an elite unstoppable offensive line and wanted to score 40, 50 points a game, they could without thinking twice. That's just not their composition right now. Jaden Daniels, of all the young quarterbacks, he is the one I'm going to already go ahead and throw in as a bona fide star. And I do want to spend the time on Jaden Daniels' segment talking about him, his development versus Caleb's development. Cliff Kingsbury and the Commanders have done a great job of developing Jaden Daniels' confidence and his game by scheming him layups. And this is exactly what the Bears haven't done with Caleb. As Jaden eased his way into the NFL, the Commanders said, all right, we're going to scheme you a lot of layups, a lot of easy slants, screens, quick passes, and build up your confidence and ease you through the season as you develop your game further and further. That is what teams do with their young quarterbacks that understand how to develop a star quarterback. I never thought I'd say that about Washington, but they seem to have done a really good job developing Jaden Daniels. The Bears, on the other hand, expected Caleb Williams to just be Patrick Mahomes right away, and that is a recipe for disaster. Hence why I gave Caleb some leeway, and hence why Jaden Daniels is already a bona fide star, because when you combine his passing game with the athleticism he already brought into the league, it's a scary combination. A lot of people drew Lamar Jackson comparisons to Jaden Daniels, and although this is probably because he was in college longer, I do think Jaden Daniels now is a better thrower than Lamar Jackson was as a rookie. Whether or not Jaden Daniels takes that Lamar Jackson-esque leap is to be determined. I'm not too sure if he'll be that good, but Jaden Daniels seems to be the guy. He's pretty obviously going to win Rookie of the Year, and Washington might finally be out of quarterback purgatory. Matthew Stafford's an interesting one. The way NFL Twitter and overall the NFL fandom talks about him is so weird to me. I feel like Matthew Stafford will just exist for a while. Everyone will acknowledge that he's really good, and then when it's time to rank the quarterbacks, all right, this guy's better, this guy's better, this guy's better, this guy's better, that guy's better, and he seems to be written off, and then Stafford will have like one good game or one wow throw, and NFL Twitter will be full of, there's not 3 quarterbacks in history with as much arm talent as Matthew Stafford. Like, guys, chill out. Stafford's really good. He is still a bona fide star. I think he's one really bad year away from being close to the you're done old man tier, but it doesn't seem to be hitting that wall anytime soon. Yes, Stafford is really good. I don't think he's a life changer, but the way NFL Twitter like flip-flops over him, going from calling him just like fringe top 10 to one of the most talented passers the league has ever seen, guys, we need to chill. I don't really know where to rank Russell Wilson, to be honest with you. I think entering the season, I was of the opinion that Justin Fields should be the starter because while both quarterbacks weren't good, Fields' athleticism will at least give you some upside, so roll with Fields. It seemed to work when Fields started like 4 or 5-2, and then when Russell Wilson stepped in, they kept winning. But the wall, that proverbial Mike Tomlin wall, has struck the Pittsburgh Steelers yet again, and they closed their season with 4 straight losses and conceded the division when it seemed like they had it all but under wraps. So I don't know with Russell Wilson. You could put him in bona fide star, you could put him in you're done old man, and I wouldn't argue either way. So I'm going to meet you in the middle and go with super meh. All right, let's rifle off some players that I don't really feel like diving into. Gardner Minshew, backup. Aiden O'Connell, backup. Let's see here. I think this is J.J. McCarthy. You kind of have to give it time since he hasn't played a game yet. Trey Lance, backup, I guess. I almost want to put him in Galveston, but I'll be nice. Zach Wilson, backup. I'm not even gonna rank Kenny Pickett. Desmond Ridder, I'll put him in Galveston since we saw him play last year, and we all saw how that turned out. All right, there's only a few more quarterbacks I really want to dive into, so let's talk about, let's talk about Bo Nix. I thought the Broncos were crazy when they picked him in the first round, and to be blunt, I did not think he would be very good, and for the first 6 weeks of the season, he proved me right, but ever since then, he's played some really solid football and helped the Broncos make the playoffs for the first time in a decade. I do think Nix is the best quarterback the Broncos have had since Peyton Manning retired, although that's not a very high bar to clear, and I don't know how good he's going to be because he's already 24 and has so much experience under his belt. I'm not too sure how much developing is there for him to do, and I don't know if he's going to lead the Broncos to a Super Bowl. But with the flashes he's shown us already, and the fact that he helped Denver make it to the postseason for the first time in a literal decade, I'll give him some benefit of the doubt and give him some time. Apply a lot of what I said about Sam Darnold, and I think you can apply that to Jared Goff as well, but with the volume that Goff has under his belt, and the fact that he's been to a Super Bowl with another team before he went to Detroit, and has shown that he didn't exactly need the God squad of offense to look good in a system, although he did need Sean McVay, I think. Goff is kind of weird. At times, I think he's a really strong pocket quarterback that could just hit the open man, and he can just get the job done. And then I'll watch his game against the Texans, or even the game he played tonight against the Vikings, and I'll question whether or not he can be the guy to get the Lions to a Super Bowl. I'm still not sure he can do that, but the Lions are the number 1 seed, and they only need to win 2 games to get there. And I think as long as Goff can just stand in the pocket, if the offensive line can give him time, and he can hit those receivers that are always open, I think the Lions have a chance no matter how injured they are. So I'll put him in bona fide star. We have 4 quarterbacks left I really want to rank, and spoiler alert, Sam Howell is not one of them. Justin Fields played the first, 6 games of the season until Russell Wilson took over for the rest of the year, and I'm kind of iffy on Fields. I do think he is strictly a backup. I know his crazy fan base might try to kill me for this, but I don't think Fields is going to be that Lamar Jackson clone that people thought he would be coming out of college. He is the second best quarterback in the 2021 draft for what it's worth, although I don't think that's saying much. I do think Fields has enough upside in terms of his athletic ability to make him not a net negative as a quarterback, if that makes any sense. I think if you're in a situation where you have to plug Justin Fields in, he will provide enough highs to keep you afloat, but I don't think he can consistently deliver the highs to make him a star in the NFL. I'm teetering on the edge of putting Jordan Love in super meh, but that's probably a little bit too harsh, so I'm going to put Jordan Love in bona fide star. Love is kind of weird. I think Jordan Love kind of perfectly represents the Green Bay Packers as a whole. I don't think the Packers have any real superstars on their roster, but they are just a team full of B-plus players. That is exactly what Jordan Love is. Not a superstar, but a B-plus quarterback. Again, I'm not too sure that he's going to lead Green Bay to anywhere great. They're stuck as the 7th seed again, and they're probably going to get punked by the Eagles in the first round. But Love does provide enough upside to where you give him some time to work. Jordan Love felt really prone to 1 or 2 back-breaking mistakes a game during the season, and while I don't think he's a superstar, and I'm not too sure he's ever going to be one, I don't think Jordan Love is changing anyone's life, but I do think he's good enough to be, the Jeff Garcia to Favre and Rodgers' Montana and Young. I think the ship has sailed on Gino Smith. I'm going to put him in the super meh tier. I like Gino a lot. His 2022 resurgence was a sight to behold, and I still don't think he is by any means a scrub. The Seahawks did win 10 games this year, although it's not enough to make the playoffs, and I do think Gino served his role as the top-end bridge guy really well, but I don't think he's the kind of guy that can lead Seattle anywhere, even if they got a better roster, because that is a receiving core of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and their offense seems kind of capped at just okay. The final cream of the crop quarterback is none other than Joe Burrow. I think the season the Cincinnati Bengals had is almost a perfect reflection of how incompetent the Cincinnati Bengals are. This franchise got a career year from Joe Burrow and a career year from Jamar Chase, who might be in Justin Jefferson territory, and the Bengals are getting absolutely nothing out of it because they don't know how to build a defense. People are saying them missing the playoffs twice in a row is going to get Zach Taylor fired, but those of you saying that, I just want you to know that this is the same franchise and the same ownership that kept Marvin Lewis around for 16 years without winning a single playoff game. So if you think they're going to fire a coach that went to a Super Bowl and an AFC championship in the 2020s alone, you're crazy. The Bengals are probably stuck in this hamster wheel of sometimes contending and sometimes not because they don't pay players, don't know how to build a defense, and their offensive line is a turnstile despite Burrow's instincts of holding on to the ball for too long. but Burrow had a terrific 2024, and if the Bengals won more games, he'd probably win MVP, but it's not to be. And thus concludes my 2024-2025 NFL quarterback rankings video. I'm sure a lot of these rankings got you very triggered, and if any of you are triggered, please yell and scream at me in the comments below. I will look forward to not reading it and just enjoying the boosting the algorithm the video will give me. But for those of you who stuck around for this entire video, thank you very much for watching, and sometime later this week before the playoffs start, I'll drop my 2024 NFL playoff predictions. So until then, see you later. Peace.